Welcome to Recording Studio Rockstars. I'm Lid Shaw, and this is the podcast created to help you become a rock star of the recording studio. Hey everybody, it's Lid Shaw, your host for Recording Studio Rockstars, coming to you from the Toy Box Studio, the sound of East Nashville. This show is here to introduce you to real-world recording professionals to hear their stories and learn from their experiences so that you can take your recordings to the next level and become a rock star of the recording studio yourself. My guest today is a rock star of the studio and a self-described musical octopus, writing, recording, producing, and touring for the past 2 decades. A Harvard grad, no less. He started out in theater in New York City and moved into a multi-album recording and touring career with Atlantic Records.
Something like that. That. I didn't write that, but
sweet.
Well, it's explainable.
We'll get deeper into that.
Sure.
Working with everyone from LL Cool J, nice,
true
to
story.
Martina McBride.
Also true.
He has produced and toured around the world. He's a voting member of the Grammys and a member of ASCAP. And when he's not in the studio, he can be found playing piano, guitar, or singing on the stage, mixing live sound, or perhaps behind a DJ rig.
True story. All of this is true so far.
You can see our guest in action online playing with Martina McBride, Sugarland, Miranda Lambert, Michelle Branch, Little Big Town, and even on Fox Morning News and PBS. He's presently touring with James Wolpert of NBC's The Voice. And of course, I'll have links to all these in the show notes for you to check out. Please welcome my good friend, Russell Wolff. Russell, are you ready to rock?
I am so ready, and thank you for the caffeine.
You're welcome, dude. I started out, Russell, of course, with a tall cup from our espresso machine here at the Toy Box Studio, a key tool in our toolbox.
100% unfiltered Jamaican blue mountain coffee. It's awesome. So thank you.
Well, so Russell, I've done a little bit of an introduction there. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and who are you? How did you start this musical journey and get here?
Well, I'm a peace-loving guy. which is tough to tell sometimes. So stay away from my Facebook rants.
You're not talking about firearms, are you?
No. Hey, let's not
that
go
kind
there.
Of peace.
No. I'm a love everybody kind of guy, and the truth is, music for me started out as just an escape. Really, I think a lot of people that grew up in the arts, music really was an escape for. When I came up through the arts, I think as a kid, it's very different now than it used to be. When I was a kid, the only TV shows for, they didn't have The Voice, American Idol, or these kind of things. I mean, when I remember, it was, you had Ed McMahon, you had, Star Search. In fact, one of my friends, I remember he was on Star Search at like 10 years old. He tours with Keb Mo now. It's kind of funny.
Nice. Or The Gong Show, if
you're lucky, right? The Gong Show. Exactly. So, very different kind of shows. But, now I think with reality TV, today's kids kind of have a different view of what it means to be an artist or, what art represents to them. And they have this, in my opinion, I think they grow up with this feeling of, it's this fame thing, or it's this, they're destined for this fame, greatness. Whereas the arts, I think, used to be an escape for people. And I think really for centuries, it really used to be that way. I mean, going back thousands of years, really. And it really has changed within a short period of time, pretty massively.
Now it's a little more prepackaged, like getting those, those potato chip bags with just the right size for each one of your lunches at school,
When the truth is, you really want the whole bag, and you want the full 8-ounce bag.
You want to escape with the bag of chips.
You want to escape into the bag of chips and never leave.
So right on, man, a Harvard grad. I want to ask you a little bit about that. I actually come from a lineage of Harvard grads, and I broke the mold and did not go to Harvard myself. So it's nice that you're bringing a little bit of that into the studio here. You were in Boston, huh?
I was in Boston, and to touch on the Harvard thing, I'd be remiss if I didn't tell a little of that story, because it's a fair bit misleading, I think, to just say I'm a Harvard grad. So on the one hand, I feel like my story is a little more heroic than I think the average Harvard story, in that I was truly a terrible student. I mean, I'm like the worst student ever. I was a flunky in high school. I was the burnout kid.
You were like the Matthew Broderick of Harvard.
Yeah. It's I mean, I was the burnout artist kid. I was always, in high school, I was always stoned. I always had shades on. I know it's hard to tell when people hear this, and if they go to any of the links, they're going to see this bald guy, and I haven't had hair in over 20 years. But at a time, I had, like, if you remember Fast Times at Ridgemont High,
oh yeah,
I looked like Sean Penn's character. That was kind of what I looked like in high school then, with shades. And I really never carried any books in school. I just carried a guitar, and I really didn't go to any
Spicoli or something.
Yeah,
was that it?
Yeah, I think so. Spicoli, which sounds like a delicious sandwich meat, to be honest.
It does. And if you haven't seen that movie, just to give it some context, he was the guy who ordered a pizza to be delivered in the middle of class.
Which I believe is something I would have done and probably did do several times at high school. And, so I really had a tough time both growing up and trying to be a student. I had really bad ADD at a time when I think a lot of people were being overdiagnosed with it, and it was kind of a fad thing. But I really did struggle with that, and do struggle with that throughout my whole life, and legitimately, with that.
I'm sorry, what are we talking about?
Exactly. So caffeine's really great for me. And that's, I love the color of that wall. And, it's, man, now what were we talking about?
Squirrels.
Damn you, squirrels.
So Harvard, you were a comedian. You were like outside. You were kind of goofing off. Now, let's not forget that Harvard also welcomed that. That was home of National Lampoon.
It was.
So maybe, I don't know if there's a connection there, but.
So the connection was, so basically it took me 16 years to get a college degree. So that's the long and short of it was, I leave, high school barely. So I flunked out. I had to go to summer school while I was going to camp for, performing arts. So I'm already on this arts track, because that's really where I'm finding my home. Theater, singing, music, all that. And that's really the only place I feel like I fit in anywhere. So I'm already on this track to go touring, writing music, making records. And by the time I'm 16 through 18, I'm already out there doing that. And I wasn't planning on college, but, I went to some college parties, and I'm like, wow, college seems cool. Everybody's hanging out, having a good time in New York City, getting drunk, getting high. And that's kind of what I thought life was going to be like, this party scene.
Wait, to go to college or to go into music and arts?
Both. This is pretty much what I thought as a young man in New York. That's kind of what I thought life was going to be like, this nonstop party. By 21, that all stopped, and I kind of figured, oh, wow. We'll get to that later, but I sort of noticed that the people that were going on and partying started dropping dead. I was like, oh, wow, that's not cool. And the people that I noticed that would go to sleep early and show up on time in the studio, those guys were going on to have like real careers. So I very much, shifted my path in that way and stopped partying and got into health and all that. Anyway, but the Harvard thing was a complete fluke. So to be perfectly frank, I went through many years of trying to get a college education, totally failed. Put out 6 records as an artist, and it wasn't until 2001 I had moved to Boston, started producing other artists, and I'm sure we'll touch on that a bit. And so I was living in Boston, and I got a job. I was working in computers, and got a job at Harvard. One of the best benefits ever in the history of benefits for a job is if you work for Harvard. It doesn't matter if you sweep the floor, anything, any job you have for Harvard, they let you go there for free of charge, and you can get a degree there.
Wow.
You have to get the grades. And for me, it was, and this is what I mean about it was very special and very personal for me, because I grew up thinking and hearing from, people, guidance counselors, thinking, I wasn't smart enough for this, that, or the other thing. So to go from dropping, failing out of high school to graduating Harvard with honors was really, it was deeply important to me. And in my family, nobody had graduated from a college like that. So it was big for my family too.
That's awesome, man. That's great. That's a cool story, and it's cool to hear how you started out in a place of kind of struggling to find out what you wanted to do with that, and then end up pursuing your musical dreams and your vision of performance and art, and where you are today with making records. That was a lame segue.
No, I think the actual segue was a lame segue. Have you seen that thing? It's ridiculous.
Oh, yes.
Who
right.
uses
yeah,
those?
Yeah, mall cop, right?
Yeah.
All right. So I want to talk about a little bit about some of the stuff that's going on with you now. So fast forward a little bit to some of the projects that you've worked on. There's one in particular that really got me excited. I know you've got some pretty amazing accolades to your discography and some big names in your discography, stuff you've worked on. But there was a particular project that you did just straight from the heart that really just blew my mind. Can you tell us a little bit about the Project 365 or the 365 project?
Sure. Yeah. And so a very close friend of mine, you know how Facebook invaded all of our lives, and in which it's funny, the guy who started it was at Harvard when I went back to school, and he started at Harvard there. So Facebook takes over the world, and we find out all these things happening with our friends that we never thought we'd speak to again, because in real life, that's what happened. You lose track. You always wonder, what happened to so-and-so from high school or this or that? So I got a chance to reconnect with so many old friends from camp and high school and this and that. And one of my very good friends from my old neighborhood in high school, and actually my first girlfriend, because I proposed to her when I was 5 years old. I told my mom I was going to marry her in Burger King and get her a ring. We had a little hardware store that had a clucking chicken. You put in a quarter and it gave you a ring. So anyway, I was going to give her a little clucking chicken ring and marry her at Burger King. My mom wrote the whole thing down, but this was my very good friend, Dana. And so, we stayed in touch for years on Facebook, and then turned out she got diagnosed with stage 4 oral cancer. And, this was really tough. I mean, it was very tough for her. She had a young child. She was a single mom, and she lived in Atlanta. So at this time, I had already lived in Nashville, so we were only a few hours away. And I felt really helpless. I felt like I wish there was something I could do. And so you were mentioning this project. So what I wanted to raise awareness for the kind of cancer that she had. And I felt like, because what she had, this oral cancer, it could have been caught earlier. It could have been prevented. She didn't have to suffer. She didn't have to, she eventually passed away. She didn't have to. But I think the best thing that the project did, and I'll talk about what the project was, but the best thing that it did was every day during the year that I did this project, she knew that somebody was thinking about her. She knew that it kept her spirits up. In my songwriting career in general, a lot of the songs I write, are ridiculous. I mean, I've written songs about nipple rings. I've written songs about, crickets, like all kinds of crazy. I wrote a song that year about, the locust invasion. What would they call them? Cicadas.
Right, the cicadas. Was that the year that we had the 3 different years all pile up?
Exactly.
And everywhere you turned was just a cloud of cicadas.
Yeah, they were in your mouth. They were like everywhere. So I wrote the Cicada trilogy. So 3 days in a row, I wrote songs about cicadas. There was this one song called Sammy the Cicada, and I really wanted it to be based. I wanted to make a cartoon out of it, actually. And it was Sammy Cicada was like this old man, like old Jewish man cicada, and he was like on Miami Beach, and he's just out there like, hey, it's so humid, like this old cicada. Anyway, but she was cracking up, she loved it. And anyway, so I wrote a song every day for a full year, and I actually it started 10 days before the new year. And the day I decided to do the project I was actually at Keb Mo's house, because he has a party every year around that time. And, I was talking to people around there, and I think the moment I knew it was like really something that would be helpful for a lot of people, I was telling some people at his house about it. And one woman I was telling about it, she pulled me over. She goes, and she just started crying. And, she was telling me that she was wearing a wig. She was in the middle of chemo, for breast cancer. And I had no idea. I mean, she had a great wig, and her spirits were just so great. And obviously I didn't mean to make her cry, but she just gave me a huge hug. And, she told me how much it meant to her, that I was doing that for somebody. And,
That's an amazing story. So you, to kind of recap that, you reached out to help a friend in a great time of need, and also to raise her spirits through that critical year of going through the chemotherapy and the cancer by writing a song every single day, which is just, that's like, there's like two things to talk about there, really. Tell us also about just the process for you of going through the songwriting. That in and of itself is the kind of thing that I think could be seen as just an impossible feat for a lot of people. The idea of, I'm going to write a song every single day. I think there are a lot of people that think, I'm going to write a song one of these days, period,
It's both easier and harder than you'd expect, and it's one of those things. If I, even for a second, thought, if I was consciously thinking about what I was attempting to do, there's no way I could attempt it. It was just such an impossible task. I was sure at the end of the year, there's no way I could ever attempt it again. In fact, I don't think I wrote a song for at least a year after that year. Normally these days I write mostly when I'm working with another artist, for an artist that I'm producing, and I'll kind of co-write with them. Obviously when I was more active as a touring artist for my own material, I was writing a lot more. But for that year, process-wise, I would pick up my instrument, whatever instrument I felt like picking up that day, whether it was a guitar, whether I was sitting down at a keyboard or a piano, whether it was some days I would just pick up a bass, and I would just, just come up with some little bass line. And then I'd say, I like that riff. I like that riff. And then I would just, record it into my iPhone or my laptop. I'd open up my laptop and record the little riff. And then I would just kind of play it back or loop it. And I'd, just record a little thing over it. And bottom line is, there was no such thing. I just made a rule. There was no such thing as a song that was a bad idea.
Yeah.
And it was almost like a game. I actually encouraged a lot of people that I worked with that year and in subsequent years to kind of use that as an exercise, because I felt like it was a great exercise for me. I felt like I needed to write, 300 and something awful songs to write a handful of really great nuggets.
That's great.
I'd like to include Sammy Cicada in the nuggets, even though, it's not useful for anything, but it was such a fun song.
Hey, there's a lot more cicadas out there in the world that might be fans of that song than people that might not.
The cicadas will rise again.
They will definitely rise again.
And they will say, don't call it a comeback.
Wow.
See how we came full circle there? Back
we
to the bio.
Indeed. So talk a little bit about, the goal setting that might have been involved in that too. You came from a place of feeling like your only goal at one point in your life was to have a good party. And then you saw people around you sort of getting up early in the morning and going to bed on time or whatever, how you described it. That sounds a little bit like people, I don't know, acting responsibly or setting goals or doing something like that. What about that was part of your process? You described it as getting up in the morning and working on a song. Did you just kind of set your goal as a daily goal when you did that? Or was there sort of a long-term goal? I know perhaps the goal was for your friend to help Dana through the process of, your support.
So do you mean it, so in goals in relation to the project or just in relation to
in relation to anything that I imagine there must have been 365 times an infinite number of reasons to stop and not write a song every one of those days. How did you create this goal setting or this ability that made you feel like I know what I need to do and here's what I'm going to do next, not feel overwhelmed by it?
Well, I really did approach it as, I think much in the way that, like an alcoholic maybe will approach a recovery program, where it's like, you approach it a one day at a time thing, or, you don't try and chew off the whole thing. You just try and say, okay, you got to do this one thing. And the other thing that I did in my mind and in my concept of the whole thing was, for the longest time, and there've been a couple of big things that have happened in my life that we may or may not touch on in this interview that have shifted my whole brain space into a place where I really do believe that any of us can drop dead at any second. So I don't have anything in my brain that believes in limitations. I really don't believe in waiting for things. I don't believe that anything's impossible. I do know. So, like, for instance, I have a lot of friends that'll move to Nashville, and they always, I hear people say things like, "Oh God, only if such and such, fill in the blank, if I could only meet fill in the blank, whoever this is, I might have a chance at X, whatever that is." And, I've never really understood that kind of thinking. I've always been like, on the other side of it, where it's like, I make the rules, or I make the road, and I drive on it. And, I feel like we're all responsible for our success, and I wouldn't say failure, because I have so many friends that I love dearly that I look at their lives, and it's not that they fail. I don't feel like they fail, but I feel like they don't achieve what they could. And I feel like a good part of it is fear. I feel like a lot of people live with fear, and I'm
a lot of people, or all of us.
Well, okay. And I have my own fears. I'm not saying I don't have fear, but what I am saying is that I have this, so in a number of ways, and at a number of times in my life, I've had experiences where I almost died. And to be honest, I was able to share some of those experiences with Dana as well. When she had all kinds of surgeries, she wasn't able to talk. She had all kinds of tubes in her, for in her neck and her mouth and, everything. And so I called her, and we had long conversations where, she would be typing, but I'd be talking, and she was so scared. I mean, because she wasn't able to breathe on her own, and this and that. And I've experienced that, and I've been in the hospital long term, and, before the time I was 30. So I got to a certain point in my life where I was like, okay, because I was a healthy person at that point, in my life, anything can happen. I've also been walking across the street in a city, and a speeding van literally just came by and just slammed into me. I was thrown across the street in Boston. These things happen. It could happen to anyone.
Are you saying Boston drivers aren't careful? Because I grew up there, and
hey, let me tell you something.
You're absolutely right.
But I'm saying, you can walk to an ATM anywhere in the country, get shot. I'm saying, nothing is guaranteed in this world. On any given day, it can be your last. And I really do my best to do everything I can to get the most out of every day. And it's not for me, it's not a cliche. I know for a lot of people, it could be, but for me, I really do. I try and live with no regrets, and I try and live in a way that if I did die in my final seconds, I wouldn't want to be thinking, "Oh man, why didn't I ever, do something like that."
Well, what's so cool hearing your story too is that, the way that your experience on the 365 project relates to art and to what we might be doing as with our business in music, or as entrepreneurs, which, if you want to go into a career of music, ultimately you're probably going to have to embrace your inner entrepreneur, because, so much of it is self-employed.
Right.
But your process with the 365 project, and I think the process that we ultimately all have to embrace, that's part of our whole creation process and learning to make records and, just trying to make a wonderful creative thing, is knowing our why, and when you were doing that project, the way that you seem, I imagine that the thing that carried you through that songwriting every single day was knowing your why every single day, and then your philosophy of just embracing the moment and just saying, I'm not going to spend today worrying about tomorrow.
Yeah.
Spend today living it, making records, writing songs. I mean, that's what the show's about, is making records and writing songs and recording in the studio and stuff. So, but I think the inspiration of it all is so key. And I think that's what we all need. I mean, the thing that carried me through, that carries you from starting out to this point right now, it's inspiration. It's the drive to want to be creative and make art. So knowing that and becoming aware of that and getting in touch with that is really at the root of whatever it is that you want to do, I want to do, our listeners, the rock stars and the future rock stars want to do with their music and their recordings and stuff. So that's great stuff. So, hey, I want to share something that's from your website that I pulled down.
Oh, boy.
Because I know you spend a lot of your career working with other artists, working with songwriters and stuff. And so that you had this great quote on there. I'm going to read it to you, and then if you want to respond to it. So this is from Russell's website, and it is, my path is to work with great artists and help them make great art. There's so many acts out there that get up on stage with nothing to offer. Bummer. They might be attractive, have a nice voice with a decent song, etc. But this world, the music world, is not made for most of them, and I long for the artists. The ones who are in pain, screaming, needing to make their art, their record, their song, or performance, because without it, they would die. That's me. That's why I am still here. When there is no other choice, then and only then is this truly the right path for you. So that's some deep stuff, dude. Do you want to comment on that a little bit about what that means to you, or how is that part of your philosophy working with other artists, songwriters, musicians?
Well, I think that I think if anybody who's ever worked with me is listening to this, they'll understand that. My process is intense. I mean, because it's no different now than it's ever been. Meaning, I don't approach any record that I work on differently than I approach my first record, and by that I mean, every single day I'm working in this industry, every song, every session, everything to me is special. I mean, every record I work on, I approach as if I might not get a chance to ever work on something again. And I take, if I get the opportunity to work with the client, and they're entrusting me to guide their path and to work on a piece of art with them, and to help them bring it to the world. I mean, that's, it's the greatest trust in the world. I feel such a heavy burden and responsibility, to them. I mean, I don't have any children, it's like, so for me, that right now anyway, in my life, that I take it very seriously. It's funny. It's not that I take myself seriously. I mean, me, we joke all the time. But, I don't take any of this stuff lightly. I often talk about how I've gone for years sometimes without working. I don't mind that. Like, I'd rather go without food than without the right projects. There have been times. So I've met people. Some of the things the quote refers to is, certainly in big industry towns, LA, New York, Nashville, I've met lots of people that names aren't important, where managers have invited me down to a club and said, "Oh, Russell, you got to meet this great artist. She's on X record label and blah, blah, blah. And we've heard your work with this artist, and we think you'd be the great fit, and we really want you to do this record." And I've met the artist, drop dead gorgeous, or super handsome, if it's a guy or whatever, and they got the whole package, and they say the right things on stage, and they got the gleam in the eye, and perfect voice and perfect pitch and whatever it might be, catchy lyrics or something, but it's all just,
their shoes aren't even dirty.
Yeah, exactly. It's all just a little too perfect. It's all just a little too clean, and it's all just a little too spoon fed for me. And and there might be really great money in it, but I just, I never follow the money. The money is not. I'm the least money motivated person that I know. Much to my father's stunning disapproval. He's a corporate attorney. Love you, Dad. If you ever hear this, I do. My mom has always been very, very approving and understanding of what I do. I think my dad at times been very confused. He's like, you have a Harvard degree, you could go on to law school, But that being said, yeah, I mean, it's I need to work with the people that came to this like I came to this. The kids from a broken home, the kids that, that had the issues with drugs, with alcohol, that maybe lived on the streets, that just, I don't know, like that. The art served a purpose, and not just for them personally, but that the art serves a purpose, a greater purpose in the world. The art shouldn't just be self-congratulatory. That's not art.
Right.
The art is supposed to serve a greater purpose for society.
It's not just about a hit song. It's about making somebody's life better.
Yeah. Or affecting it, making thought-provoking, emotion-provoking,
Yeah. Well, again, like I was saying, knowing what your why is the ultimate motivator for what to do next. And it's interesting that you talk about not being in pursuit of the finance or the money of making a record, but being in pursuit of a wealth of creativity, for example.
Yeah.
Well, good stuff, man. Well, let's segue now after these deep, heavy discussions here and go into our finale, what I like to call the jam session, where I just hit you up with a few fast questions and we can jump into some of the kind of fun, techie, geeky stuff of the studio.
All right.
So tell us a little bit about, something that was an inspirational, actually, let me back up and re-ask this question. Do you have anything that was an inspirational quote about making music, something that kind of turns you on, and a saying in music making? If you don't, that's fine too.
Yeah, I mean, it was more of a concept that I picked up, and the truth is, I picked it up from enough of the right people just over many years that I can't pin it on one person. But I just picked up enough times over the course of 20 to 30 years that there was no right or wrong way to do something. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like to say there aren't good and bad microphones. There are just the right microphone for the right thing you want to do in that moment.
Yeah.
I mean, there are probably some that maybe don't sound that good that often.
Of course.
But, it doesn't matter whether you're using an Elam 251 or a micro cassette recorder. There's a great reason to use both.
I love those micro cassette recorders.
Yeah, and I just picked two really good ones. So
awesome.
Awesome. So can you share something that was an important failure or a setback for you in your career that turned out maybe to be a great learning lesson?
Every record I've ever made. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, well, all my records were failures, and I love them dearly. I mean, it's funny. I literally learn from every experience I've had, and they're all failures and they're all successes. It's just one of those things. I tend to learn from everything. I know that sounds so generic, but I really do mean it. I mean, I can tell you, moving to Nashville was very strange for me at first, but then it turned into this great thing. I can, every time I see Martina McBride, I thank her because I can say this on the podcast. I was about ready to leave Nashville in 2010, and then I got this gig playing with her. And if people go to the web thing, if you go to the video for Wrong Baby Wrong, you see me playing with her. That gig spawned a lot of work, and so I always tell her that, and she's like, "Oh, whatever." I'm like, you trust me, you helped out a lot. So.
Well, that's cool. That probably answers the next question, which was tell us about a moment of success that felt like a hit moment for you.
You know what I'm going to tell you about is my greatest moment as a performing artist when I was out there touring. December 4th, 1999, actually. I was in upstate New York in Clifton Park, and I was opening for, at the time, my favorite band. They were a Canadian band named Moxie Frubus. Now, if you Google them, there's a lot of controversy about one of their members at this point, but let's not even, whatever. But at the time, they were at the top of their game, and I was a huge fan of theirs, and they had given me a real opportunity. And I had an album out called Nipple at the time, and at the end of every show, I mean, this is real. At the end of every show, we threw out these baby bottle keychains, like the top of baby bottles, pierced with keychains. And anyway. Nice. I got on stage and we played to, I think there was like 1,500 people in the audience. And there are some songs from that somewhere on my website because they had, tapers and everything at their shows. So bootleggers. So I ended up releasing it as a live album. And I got off stage that night, all these people that had never seen me, but they knew I was opening for their favorite band. They were singing all my songs within the first verse. They caught on by the first chorus. I had made it. For me, that was like my rock star moment as a performer. And I got off that stage and I said to myself, and I'm not a religious person, but I got off stage. I said, you know what? If nothing else ever happens for me in the music industry, thank you. This was enough. And think of it, and this is 1999. So this is a long time ago at this point.
That's great.
16
That's a good
years
feeling.
Ago. Oh, it was amazing. So I feel like everything after that has just been butter on top of a warm muffin, which obviously makes the muffin better and juicier. And then, it's really funny. Yeah,
that is a good feeling. I don't know that I've experienced that. Having somebody sing all my lyrics in the audience like that.
Well, and then, so like, if you go forward from there, maybe 7-8 years later, I'm producing artists at that point. And so now we're playing stadiums, now we're opening up for, at the time, like Leanne Rimes or Sugarland or whatever. And I'm touring with an artist I'm producing, I'm writing with. And now we're in front of like, 20,000, 25,000 people, way more than I had ever been in front of with my music. But, obviously I feel a part of that act. And so now you can just sneeze and the crowd goes wild. It's really funny. So, if the artist at the time, she was tuning her guitar and there's silence on the stage and all these people are kind of looking around, and I would just start up a Journey riff, on the keyboard, and 25,000 people just go, so, that's, but I'm telling you, 1999 in front of 1,500 people in upstate New York. That was the best.
That was the jam, huh?
Yeah, that was the jam.
Did you try sneezing on the mic to see how that worked?
The sound guy that night would not have been happy. He was a little grizzled, not so happy about that. So I didn't want to go there.
Hi, I hope you are enjoying hearing from today's featured rock star. We are just about to head into the jam session, and I want to let you know that all the cool stuff we talk about will all be available in the show notes for this episode. If you would like me to send it directly to you, all you need to do is text Jam Session to 33444, and I'll send you free content, including the show notes. Again, that's Jam Session to 33444, and I'll send you free content, including the show notes. Cheers. All right, so here we start to geek out now. What recording tip, hack, or secret sauce would you like to share from your experience with our rock stars?
So, let's see. A hack. So a hack, the big secret weapon is don't overcompress, especially when you're starting out. It's a pretty easy one.
Yeah.
The secret sauce would be, that there's no secret sauce. And that don't use secret sauce until you know how to use secret sauce.
That's true. In my whole career, there have always appeared some new box, some new plugin, some new something that's supposed to, do it for you. And inevitably it gets overused, and then everybody backs off from it, and then somebody uses it like crazy, and then it becomes trendy.
So yeah, I mean, the truth is the secret sauce is your ears and your mind. The same way, because I do a lot of photography as well, the same way that I can do a shoot with my iPhone. Now, I have a very nice SLR. And when I do album covers for artists or when I do promo shoots for a model or whatever, I use that SLR. But I can just as easily use my iPhone because the photo shoot happens with my eyes and my brain. It has nothing to do with the camera. The same way that the recording has nothing to do with this microphone or that plug-in or this or that.
What's wrong with my microphone, man? These are the Mic Tech PM9s right here.
I am a Mic Tech endorsee on one of their posters, happily. And anyway, the point is we can make it work. If you send me out in the field and say, I need you to get a great record, here are these tools. Here's like an M-Box from 98 and copy of Pro Tools, whatever, and et cetera, et cetera. We're going to make it work because we have these ears and this brain and we just make it work, So you'll develop that if you're meant to, the special sauce, but in capable ears, anything can be used as a really fun tool,
Yeah. Well, so to respond to the stuff you just said about overcompressing, I think one of the reasons that I started by overcompressing is because I didn't know what I was hearing back at first sometimes.
Sure.
So, at the beginning, especially if you're in headphones or you're in weird monitor situations and you're not 100% certain, you can always undercompress because you can always compress more later.
Yeah.
So that's great. And then as far as new tools that come along that are kind of doing something and watch out and be careful with them. Auto-tune's a great example. But here's the irony, right? So when auto-tune first showed up, everybody was being conservative about it and everybody was afraid that you might hear it. And then Cher used it on her song and everybody was like, and that was like, whoa, and then T-Pain comes along and it's used to the extreme. So what's the advice there? It's be careful with it. And the oral exciter was another one when it first showed up. It was like, wow, Instamix, or the L2 plugin for limiting. Yeah. So, I think the two reactions you might have are use it gently a little bit and then, give your ear a break and come back and see what you think tomorrow, or just dig right in and start the next fad now. Sure. Why wait?
Yeah. I mean, the truth is if you have time, you can do anything you want. So if you have time, and you should, in the beginning, you should have time. So you should give yourself time to screw up. Screwing up is like the best thing you can do. Screwing up is awesome. That is the best way to learn. This is the best way to learn to cook, best way to learn to record, best way to learn to write songs. Screwing up is essential to life.
I think you could almost say for certain that Rockstars, your favorite records that you listen to, those little bits and pieces, those favorite parts, that weird thing that happened with the vocal or that bizarre breakdown or the distorted guitar that did that amazing thing.
Accidents.
They were probably accidents that got captured and saved for later. And then the last thing I wanted to say about your secret sauce comment is I think the takeaway is you are the secret sauce.
Yeah.
Just, you are the best thing you can bring to any recording you do. The tools are just there to help you bring your own personality, put your heart into it. All right, next up, do you have a favorite book maybe you've been reading that you want to share?
So sadly, with my really raging attention deficit disorder, my brain is not wired up to read. I literally cannot read.
Okay.
It's awful.
All right. Well, there's probably other people who have the same experience. Do you have some substitute that seems to satisfy your desire for learning, for example?
I can read kind of short form stuff. I mean, when the internet really got rolling, I started to read a lot of articles online. I've gotten tape op since forever ago.
Yeah.
So we were posting about Larry Crane we're referencing.
Yep.
We put a little footnote there.
We just saw him this week at NAMM here in Nashville.
So, you know, I mean, I've read tape op forever, but I read the shorter articles, but sometimes I'll read the long interviews, but it'll just take me a while to get through them. So I'll read a section at a time.
So it's like read a section, look at a squirrel, read a section, look at a squirrel.
Pretty much. Yeah. It's real tough. People, I think there are a lot of people that think ADD doesn't exist. I mean, there really are. But to people that actually have it, it's very frustrating because you'll read a section of something or you'll try and read a page of something and you get to a certain point and you realize you have no idea. Like, first of all, your brain is on something else and you have no idea what you just read. You have to go back to the top of the page and it's all new again. And then it's a cycle that just keeps repeating. It's very frustrating. So, like the people say RT or FM, read the manual.
Right.
We can't, so which was really cool for learning. Like, I can't read a note of music, but I've been playing music since I was 7 years old, so I can't open up a sheet of music. I just learned by hitting notes and I was like, oh, hey, I like how that sounds. Or, so I play stuff by ear. I always have,
Okay. So, do you ever find that video is a good substitute for that?
Sometimes, but I find that my brain sometimes trails off with visual in a similar way, not as bad with text, but sometimes with video it does trail off a little.
Yeah, so shorter videos.
Shorter videos are great. That's why you were telling me you legit watched some videos on some recording stuff, and they were long. He was telling me how long these videos were. I'm thinking, how do you get through all that? There's no way I could.
Actually, you know what? What I was talking about was I just finished watching Joe Gilder, who is also on Recording Studio Rockstars. He did a series of excellent video tutorials for PreSonus Studio One,
we love PreSonus,
which is a very cool app for recording audio in. And he created a series of videos, and they're actually all pretty short, like 5 minutes, 6 minutes, 10 max or something. But I sat down and binged watched them all last night.
Did you make popcorn?
I watched 45 videos back to back, and I loved it. It was great. So I highly recommend, if you're curious about Studio One, go check out Joe Gilder's videos for that. All right, so we're getting near the end here, but I'll continue on with a few more questions. A favorite hardware tool, something that you really enjoy using in the studio, whether it's something from a tuner to a mic or a piece of favorite gear. For example, one of mine is my old Boss Dr. Rhythm. Just anything oddball, something you really enjoy in the studio.
So I think it's, what's really fun is just to go over like kind of this chain that I set up that I like to use a lot. I don't use it for mobile just because it's kind of ungainly to take it out of the rack, but it's the cheapest chain that I've ever set up, and but I love it so much. It's just dirt cheap, and people look at it and it's just quote garbage. No offense to the companies that made it, but you know what I mean? Like, it's not this glorious vintage gear, but it sounds amazing. And I've used it on so many records that are on the radio and just whatever. So first of all, you start with a great artist that has a great voice. So perfect. Start with that. And your source should be great, right? But then Mic Tech mics. I use a lot of Mic Tech mics. Tend to love the CV3s. I still have a CV4. A lot of singers I've worked with in Nashville tend to favor the CV3, but I kind of keep them both set up. Mm-hmm. And
those are both tube mics.
Yes. They're both tubes. One of the CV3 is one. Well, anyway, so we'll move on from that. So then we're going into, I have my API. See, I kind of grew up on two consoles, like in Jersey and New York. I used to use a lot. One was, kind of the API older consoles, and one of the Trident 80Bs. But I have a couple of racked API pre's. So I go into the APIs, and then I'm going into, it's this really cheap, not sounding, but cheap looking, Art VLA2 compressor.
Nice.
And it's just awesome. And I set it up kind of the same way I'd set up a Tube Tech CL1B. So kind of that.
And the ART or the ART is one of the tube compressors?
Yeah.
So I bet it has a nice gritty presence to it, right?
The way it's really warm, and I kind of set it up to this really slow moving thing. It's really good on vocals. The way I have it set up, I'd have to take a picture. I'll send you the settings, but it's super groovy on bass and vocals. And I kind of have one. It's a stereo unit, but I keep one set for my favorite settings for vocals, one on bass. Anyway, so there's that, and then I have this one piece that's so that piece I got for about $75 on Craigslist. And this other piece that I got for $35 on Craigslist is my favorite reverb in the world. It is a Behringer, and it was a 2496, a V-Verb Pro.
I don't know that one yet.
It was on the market for a very short time. I'm not going to comment as to why it left the market. There was speculation. You can Google it. I don't know. I don't need to know anything about that. All I need to know is there was a young man in Dallas that was selling it for $35, and I purchased it, and it has been in my rack since, probably for about 7 years.
Nice.
And pretty much every record I've produced in Nashville, it's been on there somewhere, and it is glorious.
That's cool, man. I love stuff like that. It's just a reminder that it doesn't have to be a high dollar piece of gear for it to be the best choice or sound the best on your record.
Yeah.
So can you share with us a favorite software tool for making records? Something that you really like, whether it's a DAW or a plugin or some, third-party thing.
Yeah, I mean, I can say that there's so many software tools I love and that I use on a regular basis. I mean, I'm really, really lucky to have wonderful relationships with so many companies like, Sound Toys and Steven Slate's a good friend, another nice Jersey boy. I have a lot of Slate stuff I use on sessions. I would tell you that on a lot of stuff, I find myself using UAD plugins that I travel, because I travel so much for these international records I make. And I'll bring my little UAD Twin, which is their little 2-channel version of their larger Apollo. So there's an Apollo Twin, and I bring another a Firewire. Now they have the Thunderbolt one, but I have a Firewire extra card in there. So that gives me basically an Apollo quad on the road, and then I can use all the UAD plugins on the road. So it's a really nice portable setup. It fits in my carry-on bag. And then, it's kind of compact. So that way I don't have to worry about missing my, that Behringer reverb or anything. I can make do with the other reverbs. It's just, you can't see the sarcasm in my point is I can use a $5,000 reverb and be just as happy. Of course, that's,
Yeah, that's awesome. I've used some UA plugins here. They were actually with my older version of Pro Tools.
Nice. When
I had Pro Tools 6 still running in here. I did a huge jump. I jumped from Pro Tools 6 TDM to Pro Tools 11 HDX in one move.
That is daring.
But what's so cool about those UAD plugins is the LA2A and the 1176, I had copies of their original TDM verversions of them.
So and you got the new versions, yeah.
No, well, actually, I don't. I haven't even switched up to the new ones yet.
Gotcha.
But the very first thing they came out with still rivals any of the newest plugins that I use. So I definitely am a fan of UAD, and I'm looking forward to getting into the Apollo and the cards and getting that stuff included in the studio too.
It's a good time.
All right, so share a resource for the business side of the recording studio. Something could be software or a technique or a particular person you work with that you really like.
Yeah, I mean, I would tell you. So a business thing, technique or otherwise, is first of all, write everything down. Everything. And I would say, especially if you're working with somebody that you love, a friend, somebody you know a long time, just write everything down. If they seem to take it personally, write everything down twice. It's that's one of those, maybe this is a better answer to one of those questions about like things that I made mistakes early on in my career. not writing things down. So many misunderstandings are possible. So many hurt feelings are possible. So many broken relationships happen in this industry that started out as great friendships. It's so easy to lose sight of where you start with someone over some stupid misunderstanding. Just write everything down. Even if you don't have an entertainment attorney, you write down a simple contract in simple language between you and a friend, and just make 2 copies and you both sign it and date it. Even if it's in simple, easy to read language, because that way, when you get to the end of the record, everybody understands everything. Because even if you say, hey, for instance, I'm making a record with Lidge, and I'm buying Lidge a CL1B to do this record. And Lidge says, yes, I'm accepting a CL1B to do this record. And we both sign it. I know Lidge knows me, but we both sign that, and then it's cool. And then we don't have to worry. There's no misunderstandings. And because then we say we don't write it down. And then, let's say I never bring him the CL1B. And then, a few months goes by, and now we're friends. And he's like, hey, man, Russell never brought by that thing. Do I want to call him? And then the relationship's weird. So there are resources. It's good to get an entertainment attorney if you can. And a lot of people might be listening to this and be like, wow, I can't afford an attorney. Great news. In Nashville and probably in a lot of other cities, they have resources. If you're in the arts and have low income, like most of us in the arts, they have both legal aid available here in Nashville, and there's also a volunteer legal aid for the arts. I might be saying the thing wrong, but if they email you, Lidge, I'll make sure you have the information. But there's a society through Music Cares and through the Grammy Association that provides legal aid, and they'll give you a lawyer. They'll go over contract negotiations. They will represent you if you're sued. They will help you if you're in need in contract negotiations.
Wow,
and stuff.
What an amazing resource, man! I was not aware of that. I must have known that something like that existed, but we'll make sure to include that in the show notes so that people can pursue that and find out more about that. And I think your advice is fantastic. Having stuff written is the easiest way to refer back to it later, because we all begin this as a couple of people with instruments potentially just jamming together, and ideas are generated and then they're gone by the next bar. And but if you want to build a business out of this, you have to be able to be very, very clear and make it easy for somebody who maybe doesn't even know you yet to know what it was that you agreed on. Email has become a great part of that for me. When we started, we didn't have email, and now it exists. And so as long as you have a careful email thread, you can always refer back to that, and it just helps clear up things for sure. All right, so last question, and then we'll be done here. If you were dropped in a strange city and you could only take a simple setup for recording, it sounds like this happens to you a lot, actually. What would you choose? How would you find people? And you also didn't know anybody. How would you find people to record? And how would you make ends meet right away to continue recording? Of course, this question is really kind of addressed towards our rock stars who are starting out learning to record, and they could be people moving to a new city for the first time and wanting to start out, and they really don't know anybody and they don't know what to do, and might even be renting a single room in a shared living space, for example.
So oddly, this is the easiest question you've asked all day. I don't know why. So this is maybe because this is so common for me, and I have moved around so much, and I do drop into countries I've never been to ever before and have to do this. So in this day and age, a UA Apollo Twin. If I'm bringing just one microphone, I'm just going to go with single everything. A CV3 from Mic Tech, made right here by hand in Nashville. Obviously the cables. Let's assume the cables are all there. A laptop with probably Pro Tools, because I know what I'm doing on there, and a guitar. A small, because I'm assuming I'm traveling light, a small keyboard so I can make keyboard sounds with the pedal and everything. And how I would find people is probably just going to the middle of this town and hang out every night and see where the musicians are, and I would see who are the ones I want to hang out with and see where are they playing, where are they doing. It doesn't even if I speak their language, it doesn't matter because music is universal. And I found that in Prague, I found that in Germany, I found that in Paris, where I got a pickup band in like 10 minutes and ended up playing a show. And they were playing my music. We didn't speak the same language, and these guys backed me up on stage in Paris. It was crazy. Wow. So the other thing I would do though is if I had to make ends meet, obviously I could go back to one of my gazillion jobs I've had in this industry, such as waitering or something. But it'd probably be more fun to take out the guitar, open the case, and just play music in the middle of that city, and just get whatever money people throw in it. And I would do that every day until people realized that I was there to record other people.
It's great advice, man. I like it. And I like that you included a guitar too. It wasn't just for a recording rig. It was an instrument too, and it points out the importance of being able to communicate with the other musicians. You show up with a guitar, you can actually play with somebody.
Yeah, it's worth mentioning when I produce in this town. I mean, I always play with the tracking bands. I generally on guitar. I generally play rhythm with the band. I'm leading the sessions. Every so often, I'll be on piano during the sessions, but I like to lead from the session. I feel more part of the record, what's happening.
Nice. Yeah. Well, any closing words to our rock stars? Anything to inspire them moving forward?
Sure. Go into just about any other industry, unless wait for it, unless you have no other choice, and then I'll welcome you with open arms.
Nice, man. I love it. Dude, thanks so much for joining us on Recording Studio Rockstars and for taking, a good chunk of time out of your day to come chat with us. Can you let our listeners and our rock stars know how they can find you, learn more about you, and follow you on the internet? Or maybe not come knocking on your door, but maybe follow you on the internet?
Well, I've had plenty of stalkers, so you can find me at the Department of Justice. First of all, I want to thank Lidge for having me. You're a great friend, and you're doing a great service with this podcast. But I'm great to have you in my life as a friend too.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. I actually just lost a bet, which is why we had to do this.
It's all right, man. But, whatever it is, whatever it is. If people want to find out, obviously they could Google Russell Wolff. They might get the VP of sales for ESPN, but more likely they'll get the bald music guy. So it's 2 S's, 2 L's in Russell, 2 F's at the end of Wolff. I'm on Instagram and Twitter at Russell Wolff. And the website is just russellwolff.com. I think those are the big ways.
Cool. Yeah. Can they contact you, I guess, through Twitter, or maybe there's a contact on your website?
Sure. Yeah, I believe there's just me at russellwolff.com.
Also, if you're looking for somebody to help you produce your next record and you just have a burning desire to get your music out, Russell might be your guy.
It could happen. Stranger things.
You don't even have to have a flashy gleam in your eye and look great on stage either.
You could be all bloodshot for all we care. We just, we don't know.
Right on, dude. Thanks for coming and joining us. And I think it's time for us to go get some brunch.
Oh, man. We're going to be like comedians in cars eating coffee grounds.
That sounds good to me. I've done it before. I'll do
Delicious.
it again, I'm sure. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks so much for listening to Recording Studio Rockstars. If you enjoyed the show and want to help make it better, please leave a rating and review on iTunes to help reach more people. You can click directly over to iTunes or go to recordingstudiorockstars.com/review for an easy explanation. And if you want more free content, all you have to do is text RSROCKSTARS to 33444. Again, that's RSROCKSTARS to 33444, and I'll keep you in the loop with articles, videos, and podcast updates. And I'll let you know about any upcoming giveaway offers, all totally free. Thanks for listening. I'm Lidge Shaw, and this is Recording Studio Rockstars. Now, go make great music.